Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into Season 3 of In the Clutch. I'm Teddy Ball alongside Jonathan Michel, and we're going to be talking about a little bit of Week 1 in this episode, as well as leading into Week 2 of the IHSA football season. But let's get this underway without further ado, and thank you guys for tuning in.
Yeah, no, I'm super excited to be back here, Teddy. You know, our podcast is become a yearly tradition of sorts, going into our third year now, and obviously it's always tough to get an episode out Week 1. You know, there's always got all the football previews coming out, which, by the way, 30 area football team previews in depth, all of them at least 2 or 3 pages worth of previews, all on CSM Overtime. You can check that out, clutchsportsl.com/overtime. But getting those previews out, getting ready for the first game, and it's just always hectic Week 1. And trying to fit a podcast episode in there is tough, but we're ready now and excited to talk some football, Teddy. It's really one of the best times of the year.
Yeah, leading into Week 1, we weren't entirely sure, when we were going to get this episode out, but we finally got it. It's just me and you today, but looking forward for the rest of the season. Do expect a few more people to be showing up here and there. Kind of a rotating door of cast that are going to be here with us this season. But overall, I think it's the best time of year. I love going into football season because it's just – it's my favorite sport, but 2, it's one of the most fun high school sports to follow. There's so much passion with it, culture as well. Basketball, there's a lot more games, but football, once a week you get to lock in. Everybody gets to watch football. We do our job, but we still get to watch some good games.
Yeah, no, definitely. And that's the beauty of football, right? Is it's not like basketball. Basketball is like just more of a sprint. You gotta just go all the time. Football is like there's the big lead up to Friday night. That's the big show. Everyone's watching, the whole school's there and everything. And obviously, again, our job is really fun because we get to pick the best games in the year to go to. So, that's always a lot of fun as well. And, we saw a great game in our WMBD game of the week last week as well. But, again, I love just the cadence of the week. We talk with the coaches, go out to practice during the week, and then everything just kind of builds for that Friday. You kind of feel like the pressure's on you a little bit, at least for myself as a broadcaster and kind of running the show and everything like that. But, I kind of like it. It's a lot of fun just looking up in the stands, looking up, looking down, wherever I happen to be at the time, and just seeing all the people like, man, this is awesome. This is, a really cool gig. And, hey, we get to talk about high school football, which is pretty awesome. So we're ready to get into it.
Absolutely. I think it's the same for players as well. You just go into the Week 1, you're a little bit nervous. You haven't gotten, you might be playing, you get a little bit of action, like, practice field and stuff like that. But it's different once the whistle blows. And the same thing for us. Like, we're a little nervous going into Week 1, but once that whistle blows, once the game's underway, we're in our element. And we're trying to we're trying to recap some of that. We've already recovered and getting ready for Week 2, but we're trying to recap some of that here today with you guys and get ready for a chaotic Week 2, surely. But speaking of Week 1, you said we had a good game, and that we did. We went to see Normal West and Peoria Notre Dame play, and what you and Latif referred to as a CSM Classic. It really was. 33-27 was the final, and 2 completely different types of games from either side. But overall, it was a great game, and it was probably the best one in the area to be at. If you weren't watching, you guys can watch it back.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I always feel as good when there's a close game. It makes us feel a little bit better that, hey, we did pick the best game, and we certainly did last week. I mean, 2 Big 12 title contenders going at it, like you said, 2 different styles of football, P&D, the ground and pound, Normal West. Last year they had a reputation. They like to throw the ball a lot. They got on the ground a bit more, and that was the game-defining factor was Cody Mulbauer, the sophomore running back. Again, I'm sure you've probably heard his name by now, especially those in tune to the high school football circles in Peoria, Bloomington, Normal, but 18 carries, 350 yards, all 5 of Normal West touchdowns. He had one on the second play from scrimmage, had a 76-yarder and an 80-yarder, and then he had the game-winning touchdown with under 5 minutes to play. And the thing that stood out to me about him, is once he got outside the numbers, outside the tackles, he was gone. There was no chance that you had of beating him. One of the fastest guys that I've seen carry the football by far, obviously this year, but over my past couple of years of covering high school sports here in Central Illinois, he's definitely one of the fastest football players I've seen. And again, only a sophomore. So Big 12, you better get ready. You got to find a game plan to stop Cody Mulbauer. And he also just won our CSM Athletes of the Week. So congrats to Cody.
Congratulations, Cody. And it was really crazy. I was producing that game, so obviously you guys were watching the game all the way you were commentating it, but I still got to see like every single one of those breakout plays. I was doing my job, and then you hear everybody going crazy. You look up real quick, and Cody Mulbauer is going for another touchdown. It was just back to back for him, and he really I wasn't really sure how it was going to go for Normal West because, like you mentioned, like they're a throw heavy team at least the past couple of years. So going into this one, I wasn't expecting a run dominant offense, but that's exactly what they were. So watch out, for the rest of Central Illinois, watch out for Cody Cody Mulbauer because he's going to be a wrecking ball for the next couple of years.
Yeah, certainly. And again, a lot of credit has got to go to the Normal West receivers and especially their tackles as well, helping set the edge. Obviously their pass game, they didn't get as many connections as many as they wanted to. A lot of really close home run balls that just were an inch or two off. So again, they were just right there. But what the receivers, were maybe lacking in terms of receiving yards they made up for and getting those good blocks, setting the edge. Their tackles, I believe, going off the top of my head, I think Jordan Stovall and Jacob Meyer, if I'm not mistaken, the right and left tackles for Normal West, did a great job. The rest of the O-line did phenomenal as well. And it was a game that we knew was going to be one in the trenches. P&D, obviously their O-line, huge part of what they do. Defensive line very strong as well. Pat Armstrong says it's the strongest, pound for pound, the strongest team he's had since he's been at P&D. And Normal West was up to the task. I can't say that they overwhelmingly won in the trenches, but they did enough to give Cody Mulbauer space and the blocks. And he didn't need much because he turned on the Jets.
Yeah, so but you do got to give credit to Peoria Notre Dame, although they stuck to their game plan, which is running the ball at will. A lot of people, maybe not be the biggest fans of that, and they didn't get a win in week 1, but they still had a really close game against a team that had over 300 yards rushing. You know what I mean? They did great stopping the pass, which is, like we mentioned, that's what Normal West's bread and butter has been the last couple years. And although they were close on connecting on a lot of those throws, Peoria Notre Dame definitely elevated on defense in that regard. So they're going to have a good season. It's just week 1, so there's plenty of time for them to bounce back and see what they can do this year. But yeah, 33-27 in week 1. We had a treat on hands for that one. That was pretty good.
Yeah, no, definitely. And, P&D's defense, big play that stood out to me was their block punt. They returned for a touchdown. Mitch Sager got the block. And then I believe Blake Maxwell or Tyler Miller, one of the two, I can't remember, returned it in. So that was a big play. And, running game was pretty strong. After a while, Normal West kind of started to bottle them up a little bit more. But, they still had some really nice, good, methodical scoring drives. They had third and medium, third and short. They got a big run when they needed to. And, Lawson Alwyn was really good, especially in that first half. And, Jack Hanley had some touchdown runs like we expected to see. So, again, when you see P&D, they got 6-7 guys. They're going to see the ball every single Friday, most likely. So, again, and even if someone goes down with an injury, again, you got plenty of horses in the barn. That's the beauty for P&D. I really am still expecting big things out of the Irish. And, even some people in our CSM Pick'ems this week, picking them to be, Peoria High. And, I think that could be possible. They looked at the history between the Irish and the Lions, their week 2 matchup. And really every year it seems to be a close game between those two. Again, two very different styles of teams. Peoria High, very fast, get out, athletic. P&D, obviously, the opposite. But every year, P&D and Peoria High play a close game. I think Peoria High won it 44-40 or something to the tune of that last year. So I think Irish could have the chance to pull a big statement win here in week 2.
And for Peoria High, that's another team. I've had them circled because last season, even the last couple years, the games we've gotten to see from Peoria High, they are so high octane offense, and even defensively, they've been great with a great secondary and having good pass rushers as well. But there's something about Peoria High. When you go to a Peoria High game, you're gonna see a lot of scoring. You're gonna see some highlight plays. Last season, we saw them score, I believe in the 70s at one of the games.
Yeah,
either that or the high 60s.
I can't remember the exact number. I know one week we weren't there because we, kind of expected this sort of outcome. Maybe not this much, but they did beat Urbana like 92 or 94-0 last year. So take that for what it's worth.
Yeah, that's insanity is what it is. The fact that you can even score 92 points like in a practice, like just having open plays against like B team defense. This is against a real team. You know what I mean? So Peoria High is no joke, and I'm excited to see what they can do this year. Really, the whole Big 12 is going to be exciting. There's so many great offenses, great defenses, and it's always a super competitive conference. I think in Central Illinois, we've been kind of spoiled the last couple of years with how much good football we get. I feel like a lot of people, when they think of Illinois sports, they think of the Chicago area. But Central Illinois has really made a name for themselves in the past couple of years with teams like, you got the Pekin a couple years ago. Obviously, I'm a Pekin alum, so I'm a little biased. But Peoria High last year, the last couple, last 6-7 years for Peoria High. Normal West is always, insane to watch. They're
Normal
so
Community too last
Normal
year.
Community,
yeah,
they're
of
so
Chicago
consistent.
Area teams were doubting them, and they played. I think they beat 3 Chicago area opponents, and everyone was like, I don't know if Community can do it. And they did. Up until they obviously lost at the semifinals, but still a great run. And I think they're running on the football field as well as in basketball as well. In 4A in basketball, beating a Central Illinois team to reach the state title game, you don't really see that too often. So again, Community's done a nice job of kind of helping get Central Illinois on the map for sure.
Community honestly might be one of the most well-rounded sports programs in all of Illinois. Their baseball team was great. Their basketball team, obviously one of the best in the state. Football as well, and even girls sports have been really good for them throughout the years, and especially the last couple. So Normal Community, you got to give them their applause because they are one good sports program. They know what they're doing.
Yeah, certainly a big win for Community, 55-12 over Richwoods last week. And I just want to take a quick chance to just kind of briefly touch on our other game, obviously this past week that we did, our inaugural small town throwdown, DMAC against West Hancock, in case you didn't see. Our second game that we're doing, that made our second game, it's, you can say it's the 1A option, I guess, every week. We're having a live audio broadcast of a small town game, focusing on the Heart of Illinois schools, Illini Prairie, Prairie Land, Lincoln Trail, those conferences or whatever. Getting out to see those schools that we previously haven't seen much of in the past. We want to make a effort to get out there, and we saw DMAC really flex its muscles, 58-28 win over West Hancock. And, anytime you're a Heart of Illinois team that puts up 58 points in a game, that there's something to be said about that. And Max Eccles was phenomenal for the Chiefs. He's going to be a huge player to watch, and really is really just not much more you could ask for if you're a DMAC. I don't think, obviously, didn't get a chance to listen back to it, but I think it was a game that was overall they had in control pretty much most of the way. So again, we'll be at Monticello at IVC this week for our small town throwdown, heading to the Illini Prairie, and our first trip to IVC in quite some time. So excited to see the Gray Ghosts and the Sages, quite a unique nickname there, duke it out on. Again, you can listen to that broadcast on Friday at 7 at clutchsportsisle.com. Dalton Carmine will be on the call for that game with a guest announcer that's TBD.
Small town schools are, like I mentioned at the start of this, culture in football, culture in high school sports are super important. And I think small towns especially really get behind their programs. You can tell when they do. Teams like DMAC, for example, I wasn't there at the game. I was, working their Normal West and Peoria Notre Dame game. But I can only imagine, when a team is that good, it really rallies the community together. And that's the good thing about not only all high school sports, but small town sports. So definitely tune in to that game this week. But yeah, I saw at halftime, when DMAC had 38 points at halftime, I believe. I didn't see how many were scored against them, but they're going to be good this year. They're going to be good. Yeah, no, certainly. Again,
loaded Heart of Central Illinois Conference. Now, again, there's that merger that the HOIC and the Central Illinois Conference had. So they got two new conference mates this year, and the largest of everything, they got Shelbyville and Clinton, two pretty good squads. So it's going to make it even tougher for these HOCI schools now to make it to the playoffs. But again, DMAC, a great statement. It's a team that's carrying momentum over from last year. They snuck into the playoffs, and again, they could have been a lot better last year. They just got banged up. And again, I think if they can just stay healthy, it's not a matter of if they have the guys. It's just can they keep them, healthy. Obviously, it wasn't the case last year, but I think if they can do it this year, they're going to be right there in terms of, being near the top of the HOCI.
Speaking of conferences, I do kind of want to get into, kind of your thoughts on Week 1 and Mid-Illini and Big 12. Those are the two main conferences in the area, at least that we cover for the most part. Just first of all, I got the Mid-Illini standings through Week 1 open here. We got some big upsets in Week 1 that, maybe a lot of people, not necessarily upsets because they were playing good teams, but, people that are fans of these teams maybe weren't expecting. Morton losing in Week 1, Washington losing in Week 1. Those are two big ones, two playoff teams from a year ago.
Yeah, and Washington, pretty close game with Caneland. They just couldn't quite get it done. A team that they beat by one score on the road last year. Caneland, returned the favor again this year. So, unfortunately, not a win for Todd Stevenson in his debut. But again, Caneland's a very good team. Washington is still replacing some key pieces. They still have lots of seniors, though. They had 27 last year, 21 this year. So they're still very much that same kind of team they were, last year. Again, Kenan McQuarrie, obviously, replacing him is obviously tough. Hunter Reed, though, is going to be great. I think a lot of good things are coming his way. But, again, there's just, a couple new things around Washington. Their line is very strong. So, I think that's something to definitely keep an eye on, especially more in the season. So you can't count out Washington. But unfortunately for them, again, it doesn't get much easier this week. They got Kankakee, a team that they lost to 7-3 last year. I remember broadcasting that game. And Kankakee lost to Nazareth Academy, a reigning state champion, Week 1 by one score last week. So that Kankakee team is going to be really, really good. And, Washington is, big opportunity for a win, but, it could be, obviously not a guaranteed win by any means at all. And, Morton, too, again, right into Luke Dyer, prolific quarterback down in Muhammad Seymour, threw for over 600 yards and obviously finished with 69 points. I know that it's not the Potter standard. I'm sure that they are really hammering defense, this week. Obviously, you're not going to face a guy of that caliber every week. But, there certainly shows that, hey, you come out week one, you learn something. Obviously, Morton, they learned that, hey, their, defense is going to need some work. So if they can get it, in check and get it back, and they can lead them to a win over Rochelle, a very good team, that'll be great for the Potters. But if not, then you're kind of a little bit behind the eight ball in terms of getting those 5 wins that you need for the playoffs in a tough Mid-Illini.
Luckily, it is the start of the season, so going 0-2 isn't the end of the world. But
most definitely,
like you said, it's definitely tough to try to climb those battles because you're still going to have tough games later on in the year, and also just getting off to a slow start. What it does to, I'm sure a lot of these teams are mentally tough, but I'm sure there are also equally as many players or, teams in general that they can let it get to them a little bit. And even if you play these 2 really good teams first couple weeks and you go 0-2, that's still in the back of your mind. You're still, you got to kick it in, and it's not a guarantee you're going to, go out and win out the rest of your games. So, definitely excited to see what Washington can do, excited to see what Morton can do, but I'm going to be watching that Washington Kankakee game pretty closely. That's going to be a good one that could possibly determine, the end of the year seedings for the Mid-Illini.
Yeah, no, definitely. And again, for a conference title, again, that Washington Kankakee game won't really matter a ton. It'll just come out of your conference record. But again, it definitely counts in terms of, the wins you need for the playoffs. It counts for, playoff seeding. I know Washington and Morton, 2 teams that expect to make the playoffs this year. So if they want to improve their seed, maybe get some home matches in the playoffs, you want to win those type of games. And really, again, I think the bigger thing is you just want to be able to test yourself, right? Again, like you said, if you go 0-2, it's not the end of the world because you play 2 really good teams. And you're going to take some great lessons out of that and everything. And so, again, if you're a fan of Morton, you're a fan of Washington, there's still, even if you do, start the season 0-2, I would not say it's going to happen. It could happen, but it's definitely not going to. I think you're going to come away with lots of good lessons, and you're going to come out better for it, pretty much. So, other Mid-Illini games, though, week 1 I have an eye on. Metamora, good win against Sterling, 28-9, and Metamora really is my dark horse to potentially win the Mid-Illini this year. Dunlap took care of business against Galesburg as well, so big win for them. And how about East Peoria? 28-26 over Springfield Southeast in a game that took over 4 hours because about over 60 penalties were called. I know there were some folks that were a little, maybe had some strong feelings about that game, let's just say that. But, nevertheless, a big win for East Peoria, who has some winnable games to start the season.
East Peoria is a team where, over the past couple of years, just like all of their sports have really, you've seen it kind of improve year by year, winning a couple more games, especially the last couple of years in basketball when they had Justin Page and the DuBois brothers as well, who's one of them still playing. But, East Peoria, they're definitely a team. They have the size where they have enough students at that program where they could be really, really good. And they got a new coaching regime this year. So they're definitely a team where, watch out for East Peoria. They're not the same East Peoria that had, they've been the last couple of years, and they really could be a sneaky team in the Mid-Illini this year.
No, it's definitely not. And again, I want to give a big shout out to Aiden Hinder. Made some huge plays for East Peoria this past week. Had a 2 interceptions, I believe, including the one that sealed the game. Had 2 touchdowns as well. I think he had like over 100 yards or something like that. R.J. Jackson is a guy to keep an eye on as well. He's, I believe, a sophomore. He had nearly 200 yards last week. So, again, he's a very dynamic player. You got Dalton Oakman, a good quarterback as well. So, there's some pieces there for East Peoria. Not guys that maybe are household names by any means, but ones that very well could be very soon. And you look at their schedule. They got Springfield Lanphier this week. Again, nothing against Lanphier, so if you have any Lions fans watching, but I think that's definitely a winnable game for East Peoria. Then you have Limestone and Canton as well. Again, 2 not guaranteed wins. The Limestone and Canton are going to come out fired up to beat East Peoria, but those are 2 games that they could win. And all of a sudden, you look at week 5, East Peoria. Don't want to get too ahead of ourselves, but there's a shot, in my opinion, that East Peoria could be 4-0 after the first 4 weeks. So that is kind of had that take going into the season, and I wanted to put it out there that I think it could happen. Not saying it will, but it could.
Just like I mentioned, like going 0-2 to start the season, if you can get those like, quote unquote easy wins at the start of the season, not that they're easy by any means, every week is difficult and has its own challenges, but if you can get those wins at the start of the year, it really builds your momentum for the rest of the year. Like last season, obviously I might be a little upset. I'm a Pekin fan. We did have our harder part of the schedule at the start of the year, and I felt like, like I said, maybe this is just me. If it would have been flipped a little bit, maybe things go differently. But obviously, that's a little bit of bias. But I think for East Peoria, it could be the exact same thing. They get that momentum going, and then boom, they just need to get one more win, and they've notched themselves a playoff spot at the end of the year already. So also a shout out, like I know you already said it, shout out to Aiden Hindert. He's a former co-worker of mine at Chili's in East Peoria. So he's a great dude. He's obviously great on the gridiron. So congratulations to him, and wishing all my luck to East Peoria, because it'd be cool to see East Peoria do something this year. It really could.
It really could. And again, I know you're kind of navigating the ship as the host. I want to bring a quick question on you. Maybe a team that didn't make the playoffs last year, real quick. A team that didn't make the playoffs last year that you think is really trying to make the playoffs this year. And I'll make it a little bit tougher on you. I'm sorry. You can't say Pekin, because I know you want to say Pekin.
I'll stay away from Pekin.
Pekin is a very legitimate guess. I would say they're definitely a big candidate for that. But
specifically in Middle Illini or just anywhere?
No, any school in our area. And I know it's tough because we had, I think, 18 of our 31 teams in our coverage area made the playoffs. So it's a pretty good percentage.
Let me
I can go first too if you want.
You go ahead. Let me think about this. I want to think of a good one.
All right. Well, mine is Elmwood Brimfield. Sorry if you're going to take that one, Teddy. A team that I was really high on. Came in at number 2 in our small school power rankings this week, which also, by the way, is on CSM Overtime. Could check those out. But a big win over Knoxville, 41-27 last week. As a team, they ran for, I think 400 yards, if I'm not mistaken. Bo Windish was insane. For the Trojans, a team that went 4-5 last year, very much had the same sort of season Pekin did. They were 1-5, got knocked out of playoff contention, but then they won their last 3 games, and they weren't a bad team by any means at all. Again, they just had some tough games all at the start, and again, Knoxville is no pushover by any means. That's a good blue bullet squad that Elmwood Brimfield just beat. So if they can beat Knoxville, I think they can give Farmington or some other teams a run for their money and potentially win that Prairie Land LTC large conference. So big shout out to Todd Hollis and his guys. Really impressed with them this past week.
Got to give them credit there. Man, I'm thinking about it. I feel like a lot of the games we covered last year were most of the time with playoff teams. I'm trying to think of Big 12 here.
We had 7. There were 7 Big 12 schools that made it.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. There's so many teams that are just.
P&D did. Normal West, Normal Community, Bloomington made it. Normal U-High broke a playoff drought, so they're no longer like the new kids on the block. They've kind of established themselves. I made it a bit too hard. Probably saying Pekin. I think Pekin. I think is.
I'm just gonna say it then. I know we were just talking about it, but with the record you talked about, with the schedule you talked about going into it, I think, and maybe this is a little like helping out, our friend, Gavin Russell over at East Peoria, but
shout out to
East Peoria seriously could sneak into the playoffs, and that's not like, because here's the thing, when I say like they have the momentum after winning those games, obviously you don't know. It's only week 1, don't know if you're going to win the rest of the games, but if say you do, the momentum, especially at a level like this, like, where it's really a toss-up. Like, these guys are young. Anyone can, if you're feeling it, you can win a game against anybody at the high school level. And I'm going to say East Peoria.
Yeah.
Just going to go with it. They have the talent. Like I mentioned, they've had the size of school where, they've had athletes in the past, like from different sports. They've had the athlete and capabilities to be good. They have a new coaching staff all the way around. And that's what I'm going to stick with, East Peoria. I think they win their 4 and then maybe snag a couple towards the last stretch of the season and sneak into the playoffs.
I like it. Well, hey, it's preseason right now. There's no better time for maybe hot takes in the preseason. Maybe we'll come in week 7 or 8, and our takes are going to be on freezing cold takes exposed or something like that. Very well could be wrong, but hey. that's kind of just the point of talking about this stuff. And again, so early in the season, anything's possible, really. So
Absolutely. This is really the best part of not only just high school football, but any football that's going on. NFL starting up this week on Thursday, or just tomorrow actually, right? So yeah. NFL starts up tomorrow. Can't wait for that. Everybody's optimistic at this point in the season. Later on, some people are kind of a little upset. Some fan bases, still go out and support your team, but you might not be like in that same race. But right now, this is where everyone has a smile on their face because anything can happen throughout the next 9-10 weeks of the season. So.
Yeah, no, definitely. And again, the teams, that I don't obviously everyone's optimistic, but maybe again, teams that maybe a little more optimistic. Teams that won, and we talked about a lot about Mid-Atlantic Big 12 games. Just want to touch on some other winners as well this past week. Obviously, Peoria High, big win over Champaign Centennial. That's a great win for Peoria High, 56-21. You had obviously Community won 55-12. Eureka over Canton 34-8. And that's a very strong win for Eureka. They looked strong on both sides of the ball in that game. And El Paso Gridley won 23-6 over Reed Custer. Hayworth 42-0 wins over Fisher, and Tri-Valley 22-16 over Peru St. B. That game a little bit surprising me. I thought Tri-Valley may win that game by a bit more, considering that they're a team that has won the Heart of Illinois for the last couple of years, and you don't really see them play many one-possession games. So maybe, again, not going to say that, and jump to conclusions by any means. It's week one, and Peru St. B is a solid team, but, I think, maybe it shows that maybe there's a chance that a team like Eureka or DMAC or El Paso really could beat Tri-Valley and potentially win the conference this year. Bloomington Central Catholic, 42-7, big win over Pontiac, and Normal U-High, again, 64 points in the first half against Manual. That was insane. So they won 64-28. Farmington, 33-0. They beat Illini West. Talked about Elmwood Brimfield. Princeville won 38-12 over Abington Avon, and Olympia won in a slugfest, 54-40 over Petersburg Porta. So those were your week one winners. Just going through those real quick. So, also, real quick, I want to shout out a team that, even though they lost, not surprised, it impressed me, Tremont. They lost 43-22 to a good Seneca team, but it's a team that only scored about 40 points all last season. They scored more than half that one game. I really like what the Turks could potentially do. Maybe, obviously, maybe it's too early to say, could they be a playoff team, but a team that could definitely show some progress this season, especially with, you got Brett Bain, Blaine Williams, Ty Dykes, also transferred from Metamora. That's an all-state lineman that went from Metamora to Tremont, so that'll really help out their run game for sure.
I think when you see teams from in the past, like teams that maybe not so good in one year, the fact like the way high school sports work is like it's not like professional where it's pretty much predictable throughout. Anything can really happen. Like some returning guys for certain teams that were good last year, they're going to continue to do good despite anything catastrophic that happens or something like that. But that's not predictable, and we don't wish on anything like that anyway. But what I'm saying is like these smaller schools, maybe you don't see as much, but you just hear about. It can flip like that. So teams like Tremont, DMAC now, not that they weren't bad, they weren't good last year, but like just how much different they can be in just, one season that goes by, a new class that comes up, more different leadership and stuff like that. It can really just flip the coin and boom, you have instead of a below 500 team, you have a team that's automatically in the playoffs a couple weeks in. So you really don't know.
Sure. Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, and so much of it comes down to seniors, especially at the small school level, in the Mid-Atlantic Big 12 with bigger schools, again, not saying you can rely exclusively on sophomores and juniors. Again, your seniors are still a big part, but really, even I think it's what I've kind of found out is it's kind of magnified a little bit more at the small school level. Obviously your team's not as big. Your experienced guys are usually bigger. They're faster, stronger. Obviously, they've been in the program or whatever and stuff every year. So again, not saying that there's if you're underclassmen, you're not going to, be a star at a small school because there are definitely some. But again, seniors are just so important. It really comes down to, if you have a good senior group, that can take you a long ways for sure. So where we're headed to now, Teddy? I feel we've covered a lot of ground. Where do you want to kind of steer this ship next?
I kind of want to go towards week 2. We've talked a lot about, going into week 2 from week 1, but I want to hear going into week 2. What is your game of the week? Maybe that we're not covering, just in general. Like, what's like a sneaky good game of the week for you?
Yeah, I mean, obviously we talked about Pure High P&D. Obviously, I don't think that's a sneaky good game. I think it's going to be a game that everyone knows is going to be good.
Exactly.
I think I have two that kind of stick out in my mind. One of them, go on the small school level, KC Westfield at El Paso Gridley, a game that we featured on our CSN Pick'ems. KC Westfield. If you ask me to point to where it is on the map, I couldn't tell you. I think it's maybe on the southeast part of the state, but I know it's going to be a long road trip, but they're a really good team. I believe they went something like 9-2 last year, so they had a pretty big week 1 win. So that's going to be a big test for EPG. And, I mean, overall, I think it's going to be a close game, but, if EPG can come away with a win, that's going to feel really good. That's a good KC Westfield team. So I got my eye on that one, as well as, again, you're going to like this, Teddy. I think Pekin Belleville East is a big game for the Dragons because, again, you win that week 1 game against Rolling Meadows. If you could win this week 2 game against Belleville East, that is huge in getting that 5-win mark. Because obviously, again, not saying that Limestone, Canton, or East Pure are guaranteed wins, but they're games on paper that I think Pekin feels like they should win or whatever. And they have won those types of games. So if you can get those 3 plus a win at Belleville East, that doesn't guarantee a plus by any means. So I got to put that work in every week. But I think it's going to, alleviate that stress about a lot more than having to okay, well, that, hey, we got to beat Metamora. We got to beat Dunlap. One of those teams to get into the playoffs. Obviously, they want to beat those teams every week, obviously, duh. But, it's not saying they're like, oh, we got our 5 wins. We just mail it in. No, not saying that by any means. That's not the case. But, you want to have, stack wins, put them in your back pocket. And Belleville East is a good squad that they've gotten pretty familiar with over the years. So.
Yeah, like you said, Pekin and Belleville East have played each other, I think, the last 4 years, including this year, the 3 before this, and then maybe even longer than that. That's just from what I remember. And I believe they've traded, a couple, 2 years ago, I think Pekin won. Last year, Belleville East won, if I'm not mistaken. So, yeah, that should be a really good one. And I am still friends with a lot of the guys that are on the team. I graduated last year, so I've talked to them a little bit, and they're really excited to see, because this is not that week 1 wasn't a test, because it was a test. They got to, play against a team that was being coached by a former NFL Hall of Famer, okay, or a future NFL Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
But going into week 2, it's another test for them to really see where they lie and kind of show where they lie instead of see where they lie, because they're teams that led by Doug Nutter and the hard-nosed defense that he brings.
Yep.
And really excited to see that one as well.
Sure.
For me, my 2, we've already mentioned one. Washington and Kankakee is going to be probably last year 7-3, defensively great, but they were 2 good offensive teams as well. Kind of just see how Washington can get back. You carry that little bit of animosity from last year, and because you never want to lose any game, but especially if it's a close one against a really good team, you want to come back the next year and you want to show them. So I want to see what Washington can do. I'll be rooting for Washington. I hate saying that as a Pekin Dragon, but I will be rooting for Washington.
You want the area to be strong.
Exactly. That's the reason I'm rooting for it. Represent Central Illinois. We're all we might be different parts of Central Illinois, but we all are here in Central Illinois. So I'm rooting for the Central Illinois team to beat Kankakee this week, as well as the crosstown showdown, Normal West and Normal Community. That one is going to be great. Obviously, with Normal West, we saw them last week, and Normal Community, I haven't seen them yet so far this season, but I can only imagine how good they're going to be because of how they've been in years past. Last year, it was a little bit one-sided in that matchup, 43-0 to Normal West, but they were a great team, or Normal Community, sorry, but they were a great team, and with the rivalry that's already implemented just from being across, the town from each other, it's going to be a good one, especially with how good both teams are.
Yeah, well, I mean, hey, you know what they say, anytime you play for a bowl of chili, you play your hearts out, and the Chili Bowl is going to be a great one for sure. Normal West obviously won it 2 years ago, so Community looking to hang on to it. West trying to get it back. But that's really the big theme for this week. Crosstown matchups. You got Richwoods playing Manual. You got Peoria High against P&D. You got Normal West, Normal Community. Normal U High and Bloomington. So there may not be 2 better cities in the entire state, including Chicago, to be in this week than in Peoria and Bloomington Normal. Just the energy between all those games is just going to be through the roof. I can't wait for it. I wish I could be all 4 games at once, but we'll be at U High and Bloomington, and I think that segues well into talking about our games that we're going to broadcast this coming week.
Yeah, so I'm pretty excited. I'm going to be producing again this week, which is a little bit behind the scenes, working on the computer, making sure everything's good. But you're calling the game. What are some things you're looking forward to with the game you're working?
Yeah, well, I mean, anyone that knows these two teams knows that, great quarterbacks. Alec Weiland for Normal U High, AJ Cadron for Bloomington. Weiland, very great dual threat guy, threw for about 270 to 80 yards last week, 4 touchdowns. AJ Cadron, third-year starter. Didn't have the best game last week, but then again, it's week 1, in a new system. Again, he's dealing with, not playing in a team coached by Scott Godfrey. It's now Mulcahy now. I don't know. I have to see if the offensive coordinators changed at all or stay the same. So maybe it is still the same for him. But again, it's week 1. We're not going to discount that by any means. AJ Kyder is the real deal, and really he's also got quite an army. He's got quite the running back behind him in Rob Lanier, who had a massive game, 5 touchdowns against Danville. So really watching out for him, as well as Bloomington's linebacking duo of Mikey Kimmel and Kenner Bai, 2 hard-nosed, tough guys that just fly around the field. All conference picks last season, and them along with Lanier and a couple other guys as well form a great linebacking core for Bloomington. And you guys got some studs on defense as well. Cole Mateka, a guy that I have my eye on for sure, just a menace off the edge. So you guys got lots of good playmakers and 2 teams that it's good to see them finally kind of become teams that can be the talk of the town. Obviously Normal West, Normal Community draw a ton of attention, but you cannot forget about U High or Bloomington. Obviously, we don't know who's the best team in Bloomington normally. If you have to do a round robin to decide that. But I think you and Bloomington, either one of them, you could throw in the conversation now after some years that they kind of missed the playoffs. And 2 teams that have a lot of momentum. Again, first time that these teams have faced off since 1976, almost 50 years, despite them being crosstown rivals. So that's what beating different conferences does to you. But it's just going to be a great game. I can't look forward to it enough. I mean, it's one that I've been super excited about for over the last month.
Yeah, anytime, like you mentioned, the rivalry games going into this year or into this week, anytime those teams, that have that, not like you said, they haven't played in a long time, but just that natural rivalry that's already implemented just because, they're a couple of blocks away from each other, maybe a little bit more than that, maybe a couple more than a couple of blocks, but you get my gist.
Sure.
Just anytime, you're close like that, we mentioned, how much energy, can be brought from these teams, and when you put that together, it really makes something special, and I'm looking forward to that, as well as something I'm looking forward to, the uniform combos. You got purple.
It's gonna look like Mardi Gras out there.
Exactly.
I was trying to think. I'm like, you got green, yellow, and purple. I was in my car the other day at a stoplight, and I was like, this is gonna be a really cool uniform matchup. I'm trying to picture it in my mind. I'm like, green, yellow, purple. I'm like, what is green, yellow, purple? I'm like, Mardi Gras. It's Mardi Gras, so it's going to be a party at the Fred Carlton Field.
Party down
in Bloomington on Friday. So yeah, great uniform match. I love UI. They have gradient helmet. You remember those old Jacksonville Jaguars helmets?
Yep.
Like the black ones that kind of transition to gold. UI's ones, they have gradient, kind of like a ombre, I think is, maybe, I learned that term from my girlfriend, by the way, or whatever, kind of like, that transitional color. It goes white to yellow, whatever, and stuff. Looks really cool, much better than those Jaguars uniforms. And Bloomington's got some sweet yellow lids or whatever and stuff. I just love it. It's going to look so good on the cameras, and definitely encourage you guys all to tune in on CIProud.com if you can't make it in person on Fridays. So
that's always some of like the best parts of the season. Just like not necessarily the best part, because obviously you want to see good football. But when you're watching good football and the teams you're watching have cool uniforms, that's even better.
It makes it just that
just
much
a little
better.
bit better, because they look swaggy out there, and they're throwing dimes. They're running. That's the best part. Peoria High has one of my favorite jerseys. I love how they all have the Axiom helmets as well. I think those look super sleek.
Well, they change their helmet like almost every year. Since I've been in Peoria and started following football since 2020, they've had the silver helmet with like the black lion. They've had the red helmet with the white lion. They've had the Michigan Wolverine style uniforms with like the helmets with like the maroon sort of whatever design that is, whatever and stuff, with like the city skyline on like the back or whatever and stuff. That was a banger of a helmet right there. So they had to switch it up. I'll have to double check. I think they went back to the maroon helmets with a white line like they did last year. But again, we'll have to see. Maybe they'll throw something at us. I don't know. How about Tremont? They got new helmets as well this year with the little turkey tracks on them or whatever,
I like
down
that.
the stripe. Really cool. Definitely check out. I want to, not sponsored. Shout out the I think it's the Illinois Football Project or something like that on Twitter. They post mock-ups of some or actual helmets of each team, not every team, but lots of teams in the state or whatever, and they showcase the Tremont new one, really cool as well. So that was kind of good to see. So we have a whole episode, I'm sure, talking about helmets, but I think we talked about a lot or whatever for sure. And also, again, you got Monticello IVC. That'll also be this Friday. You can listen to that on clutchsportsil.com as well. Monticello went 0-1. Obviously, IVC looking for their first one as well. That should be a great game. Air attack for IVC should be really good this year, so keep an eye out for Bryce Ratcliffe and his core of receivers. So that'd be a big win for IVC, so definitely tune in to that as well. Tell your friends, tell your family. We got you covered on Friday night, and also our John Camosa will also be somewhere else covering one of the games in Peoria. We're not quite sure which one yet, but he will be there. So, well, lots of coverage coming this Friday.
We're looking forward to a good week 2 of IHSA football. It's good to be back. I'm so excited for the rest of the football season. It's really starting to kick in. You have that first week where it goes into it, but it's really starting to kick in that football is back. We talked about a lot here today, John. We talked about, the athletes of the week, all the week 1, stuff like that, going into week 2. I think it was a pretty good first episode for us.
I think
In the Clutch season 3.
Yeah, In the Clutch season 3, baby. We just kind of started this kind of just out of nowhere, really, a couple years ago, and hey, glad to be back for a third season. And I think it's a good point to leave it. It's week 1 when you come on and you've been talking for 40-50 minutes or whatever, because we have more in the tank. But I think this is a good spot to leave it. Should be a great week of football. Again, we got you covered broadcast wise, written coverage wise. See us some overtime as well. Also on social media, give us a follow. Clutch Sports Media on Facebook and Instagram. Clutch Sports IL on Twitter.
All right, well, I wouldn't say as always because it's our first episode, but, from now on, I'm Teddy Ball alongside Jonathan Michel. Thank you guys for tuning in to the first episode of In the Clutch Season 3, and stay tuned this Friday for week 2 action of IHSA football.